In this section, we are going to go over the different parties to a crime. Whenever a crime is committed, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's only going to be one person found guilty of that crime. There might only be one person, but if other people had a hand in participating in the crime or helping in some way, whether it be before or after the crime has been committed, we could have additional parties to the crime. And in some cases, we see crimes with as few as two parties. In others, we might see hundreds of parties to a crime if it's a wide reaching conspiracy or something to that effect. So what we're going to look at here today are the different parties to a crime, and we're going to look at the four basic different parties, and what exactly each party has as their role, and how they might be charged with different crimes. We're going to look at this. Now, guys, this applies to a lot of different crimes. So we're not going to look specifically at like the different parties to a robbery or the different parties to arson. All right, these are parties to a crime, and the definitions are pretty universal, and they'll apply to any of the crimes that we're going to be talking about here as we move forward. So the first party to a crime is the principal, and this is the most straightforward, and this is usually what we think of when we think of a criminal defendant. But the principal to a crime is simply the person who commits the crime. All right. So for example, Mitch beats up Jason in a dark alley and takes his money. Mitch is the principal. All crimes are going to have a principal, but not all crimes will have the other parties. So in this case, we have one person committing a crime, beating someone up. All right, this is the principal. We do not have any accessories. We do not have any accomplices. All right, so we're always going to have a principal. We're always going to have at least one. We could have more than one principal if two people are involved equally in the crime. If we have a bank robbery and two people run into the bank and two people point their guns at the teller and say, "Give me all of your money," then we have two principals to the crime. All right. But this is basically just the person that commits the crime. The next one, and this is the one that we also tend to think of when we think of criminals, is the accomplice. And the accomplice is someone who helps the principal commit the crime. The difference between someone who serves as an accomplice and someone who serves as an accessory, which we'll talk about in a moment, is that the accomplice is usually present at the scene of the crime. So if you're analyzing a scenario and you're torn between whether or not you think party X is an accomplice or an accessory, usually whether or not they're present at the scene of the crime is going to be the giveaway. If you are an accomplice to a crime, you can be charged with the same crime as the principal, even if you're not the one that actually committed the crime. So in our example here, Sarah robs a bank. So Sarah's the one going into the bank, holding up the teller, stealing the money. She's pretty clearly the principal. Natalie, on the other hand, is driving our getaway car. All right, so Natalie is helping the principal commit the crime. Natalie is present at the scene of the crime. She's there right outside the bank in the getaway car. So when Sarah is charged with robbery, Natalie will also be charged with robbery. Natalie can be subject to the same charges. Natalie can be subject to the same penalties. So if you think about it, guys, you've got one person going into a bank, potentially waving a gun, making threats, stealing money, another person sitting outside in the car. All right. Why do we do this? Students always ask, well, shouldn't the person who went in wielding the gun and making the threats be charged with a more severe crime or be subject to higher penalties? And what it comes down to, guys, and you're going to see this in a lot of the things we talk about, it comes down to what we call public policy. Lawmakers have decided that it is in the best interest of the public to deter people from committing crimes. It is also in the best interest of the public to deter people from helping them to commit crimes. So we're saying to you, listen, even if you're not the one that goes into the bank and commits the crime, you're still going to be on the hook. We are hoping that by doing this, fewer people will agree to do things that put them in an accomplice role. So that's part of the reason that we have that in place. The next type of party to a crime is an accessory. We're going to talk about accessories before the fact and accessories after the fact. The accessory is very similar to an accomplice, except they're usually not present at the scene of the crime. So this is a person who helps the principal commit the crime or someone who orders the crime. So we think of like a mob boss ordering a hit or something like that. this person is also usually charged with the same crime as a principal and receives the same punishment. So if you have somebody that helps plan a crime, and then two other people go, and one person goes and commits the crime, and the other serves as a lookout or a getaway driver, all three of those people will be charged with the same crime, and all three of those people could potentially be subject to the same punishment. All right. So we've got a mob boss ordering a hit on someone. The mob boss, Christian, would be the accessory before the fact. Phoenix, the one who actually carries out the hit, would be the principal. And they would all be subject to the same punishment. They would all be charged with the same crimes. And then finally, we have the accessory after the fact. And the accessory after the fact is the only party of the four parties that we're going to discuss that would be charged with a different crime. An accessory after the fact is a person who, knowing a crime has been committed, helps the principal or accomplice avoid capture or escape. So this is a person that is not involved with the planning of the crime or the carrying out of the crime, but they're going to get involved after the crime has already been completed, and they're going to help them either hide or cover up the crime or escape or something else. Again, not a getaway driver, because the getaway driver is there during the commission of the crime. So even though the getaway driver's important role, getting away from the crime, is really afterwards, they're still going before the crime. They're still there at the scene of the crime. Okay. An accessory after the fact would be like if you show up at someone's house and you say, I need you to hide this weapon for me, or the police are looking for me. Can I hide here? If they ask you where I've been, tell them that you haven't seen me. Things like that. All right. Those are the types of people that we're looking at for accessories after the fact. And again, an accessory after the fact is not going to be charged with the same type of crime as the principal for the same public policy reasons that I mentioned a few minutes ago. We're going to try to charge the people that are committing the crime and planning the crime with a higher degree, with a more serious charge, because we want to stop them from committing the crime in the first place. At this point, the crime has already been committed, so there is no deterrent factor in charging the accessory after the fact. This is just to try to help us make sure that crimes aren't being covered up. All right, so those are the four parties to a crime. I'm going to give you guys a brief scenario, and what I want you to do, I'll post this in the Google Classroom. Your assignment is going to be to go through the scenario, look at each party, tell me what each person would be. Is this the principal? Is this the accomplice? And give me a brief explanation as to why you chose that. And again, if you have any questions about this, please put the comments below here, make them public so that everyone can see. All right, guys, have a good one.